8 months. 8 agonizing months I had been adrift, surrounded by nothing but steel, salt, and the gnawing silence of the void. The Ardon Valor wasn't just a freighter, it was a self-contained floating world. Out there you learn a brutal curriculum, to listen to the unsaid, to wrestle with your thoughts in the echoing stillness, to wait with a patience that borders on despair. That dawn, as we limped into port, the fog over the water peeled back like ancient decaying skin. My boots hit the pier with a dull thud, a sound that resonated with a chilling finality. I inhaled the harbor air, thick and heavy, a stark contrast to the sterile breath of the ocean. A duffel bag hung heavy on one shoulder, a package of wooden toys for Rhea dug into the other, and nestled in the inner pocket of my jacket, the unsent letter to Melon, penned in the lonely midwatch. It ended with the words, "I cannot wait to hold you again." That line now felt monstrously obsolete. The taxi ride home unfolded in a suffocating silence. I had told no one of my return, not the crew, not my wife, especially not her. I craved the raw surprise, the explosion of joy on their faces. My plan was simple. Ring the bell, witness their eyes light up like startled stars, crush Malik in a hug before he could feign indifference, and spin Rhea around the living room until her high-pitched laughter, a melody I had replayed endlessly during the desolate night shifts, filled the air. But what awaited me was a stark, brutal deviation from that cherished script. As the taxi rounded the corner onto Chestnut Lane, a wave of disoriented confusion washed over me. Parked in front of my house, our house, sat a gleaming silver sedan, a vehicle utterly alien to my memory, brand new, adorned with the saccharine cliches of a just-concluded wedding, white balloons bobbing in the breeze, a ridiculous ribbon tied around the side mirrors, and most sickeningly, a tasteless plastic sign plastered across the rear bumper. Just married. I blinked, a desperate plea to my eyes that they had betrayed me. The same weathered red mailbox stood sentinel by the curb. The same unruly hydrangeas lined the walkway. The same hairline crack spiderwebbed across the garage window. No mistake. I stumbled out of the taxi, the duffel bag slipping from my numb fingers. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I stared at the car as if by sheer force of will I could make it vanish, a cruel phantom of my fractured reality. Then my phone shrieked, shattering the oppressive silence. Melon blazed across the screen. Not a call, a message, short, brutal, almost casual in its cruelty. "Don't bother coming in. Lock's changed. The children don't want you. It's over." No greeting, no explanation, just a cold, declarative sentence, as glacial as the Atlantic I had twice traversed. I stood there, the weight of the duffel bag now a phantom ache on my shoulder, my gaze locked on those devastating words. My thumb hovered over the keypad. I wasn't thinking, I was reacting on pure primal instinct. I typed back 2 words, "As you wish." And I meant it, because in that instant something within me fractured, then reformed into something hard and unforgiving. All the warmth I had carried home, all the fragile dreams of reunion, of pancakes and pajama mornings, of movie nights huddled on the sofa, flash froze into a brittle, unyielding ice. A man doesn't survive the tempests of the sea by succumbing to panic. He studies the clouds, reads the currents, prepares. And in that moment, as I absorbed the brutal finality of her message, I knew I had sailed into another kind of storm, one where the rain was made of betrayal. I didn't knock on the door. I didn't try the handle. She had said the locks were changed, and whether it was true or not was irrelevant. What mattered was that she wanted me to believe it. She wanted me to slink away, feeling diminished, insignificant. But I would not grant her that satisfaction. I turned my back on the house, on the shattered remnants of my hopes. I found the nearest bench beneath the shade of a dogwood tree in our neighborhood park and sat. My gaze remained fixed on the front door. No movement, no twitch of the curtains. If she was inside, she wouldn't even grant me the dignity of a glance. Perhaps she expected shouts, accusations, pleas, but the sea had taught me the power of silence, and in silence my mind began to sharpen. I retrieved my phone, another call, not to a friend, not to my brother, not even to the captain of the Valor. I dialed Kasia Baines, my lawyer. She answered on the first ring. "Sterling," she said, her voice as cold and precise as the click of a loaded chamber. "I thought you weren't due back until next week." "Plans changed," I said, my voice flat. A beat of silence hung in the air on her end, but it wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. "Tell me." And I did. Everything. The balloons, the car, the message, the gnawing premonition that coiled in my gut. She didn't gasp. She didn't offer platitudes. That wasn't why I had hired her 2 years ago for the Port lawsuit. Cash was relentless, brilliant, and utterly unflappable under pressure. I remembered the opposing counsel trying to bait her during a deposition, and she had served him with a countersuit mid-sentence, a document she had prepared while he was still speaking. When I finished, she asked only one question. "Do you want her back?" I paused, the weight of the past 8 months pressing down on me. "No," I said. "I want to win." That sound again. A smile, perhaps, or the barest baring of teeth. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin." And just like that, the game shifted. I rose from the bench, walked past the "just married" sign as if it were a discarded piece of trash, and headed back towards the main road. I left the unsent letter for Mellon on the bench, let the wind carry its outdated sentiments away. It wasn't the message she needed to hear anymore. She had made her choice. Now I would make mine. The elevator doors in Kasia Baines' office opened like the vault of a fortress. Her firm occupied the entire 31st floor of a mirrored skyscraper downtown, a place where the carpet swallowed sound and the walls seemed to have never witnessed a raised voice. Everything in that space whispered of money and precision. I walked past the receptionist without announcing myself. Kasia must have alerted them to my arrival because no one stopped me. The door to her office was already ajar. She stood as I entered. Black trousers, a high-necked blouse, glasses perched low on her nose, not a single strand of hair out of place. In the corner of her bookcase stood a chessboard, the pieces frozen mid-game. I had never asked who her opponent was, but I always suspected she played both sides. She gestured to the chair opposite her imposing desk. "Sit down. Let's make this clean." I wasted no time. I laid it all out. The scene at the house, the offensively cheerful just married car, Mellon's curt message, and most importantly, what she hadn't said. Kasia listened, her fingers steepled beneath her chin, her gaze unwavering. When I fell silent, she posed a single piercing question. "You're not here for conversation. You're here for action. Confirm." I nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement. "I'm not going to grovel. I want this handled." That was enough. She clicked her pen, opened a thick leather file labeled Knox S, and began flipping through the pages as if she had been anticipating this moment since before my ship had even docked. "You still have signing authority on the property deed," she stated, confirming what I had already surmised. "Even if she tries to transfer anything, it won't go through without your approval. The house is secure for now." I raised an eyebrow. "She's bold. I wouldn't put it past her to try and forge something." A thin, predatory smile touched Kasia's lips. "Let her try. I've already flagged the document. If anything pings in the system, we'll get real-time alerts." She picked up her tablet and began drafting what looked like a flurry of legal documents. I recognized motions to freeze assets, a restraining order on access to the trust, and a petition to suspend joint account privileges. "She still has the trust from her father's estate?" Kasia asked, her fingers flying across the screen. "Yes," I replied. "Set up 5 years ago. He left her the money and gave me joint executive oversight. She always resented it." "Then she's forgotten something crucial," Kasia said, her smile now carrying a hint of genuine malice. "She might be busy playing bride, but she still needs your signature to access the escrow funds within the trust. And until a judge says otherwise, you are still married. We are going to use her own arrogance as leverage." I exhaled slowly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recalibration. I wasn't going to charge at her with a sword. I was pulling away the ladder while she danced precariously on the edge. By midnight, the documents were drafted. Kasia's unflappable assistant filed them with the 24-hour emergency services. The advantage of marrying into money and keeping your paperwork in order, you know the system well enough to move through it swiftly. At 12:57 a.m., I received confirmation. All access to joint marital assets was frozen, the house untouchable, accounts locked down, the trust flagged, a red alert for interference. Kasia leaned back in her chair and tapped the side of the tumbler of amber liquid she had poured. Just one. She never drank more than half. She'll panic, she said, a glint of anticipation in her eyes. Wait for the fireworks. She was right. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A voicemail arrived 30 seconds later. I put it on speaker. A man's voice, loud and blustering. You have no legal right to do this to her escrow trust. Who do you think you are? I'll have this thrown out by morning. Kasia snorted and pressed delete. Empty threats. Her lawyer doesn't realize I've already filed a preemptive motion with probate court. They'll be informed when the sun comes up. I turned to the floor-to-ceiling window behind her desk. From this height, the city lights looked like scattered fireflies. Down there, she thought I would slink away into the darkness, that I would return broken, waiting outside the house for scraps of affection. She was wrong. What about custody? I finally asked, the weight of my children pressing down on me. We'll address that by morning. Right now, she thinks she's in control. She's counting on your silence to look like guilt. We'll weaponize her assumptions. By 4:45 a.m., I was in a hotel room 2 blocks away. I stared at the ceiling as the pale light of dawn bled through the curtains. The duffel bag sat by the door, still zipped shut. I hadn't unpacked a single item. My sea clothes still carried the faint scent of salt and sweat, the ghost of 8 months of sacrifices rendered invisible. I reached for my phone again. 19 missed calls, all from the same blocked number. One voicemail held no voice at all, just ragged breathing. I saved it. Kasia had said something earlier that had stuck in my mind. She had underestimated how dangerous quiet men become when they are finally pushed too far. Mellon had sent that message thinking I would vanish, that I would accept exile and allow her to build her fantasy with her new man, to rewrite history, to repaint the walls of our life without consequence. But she had forgotten who she had married. I wasn't the type to rage and shout. I didn't need to. I studied tides, I understood currents, I knew when to let go and when to drop anchor. At precisely 7:47 a.m., my phone rang again. A new voicemail. But this time, the tone was different. Same number, different voice. Her lawyer, frantic, practically snarling into the receiver. You're a ghost. You're not even in the country. What gives you the right? You can't just disappear for months and then try to dismantle everything in 6 hours. This is illegal. This is predatory. Predatory. A humorless laugh escaped my lips. What she had done was betrayal. What I was doing was preparation. There's something profoundly disorienting about standing before a place you built with your own hands and realizing it no longer remembers you. It doesn't ache for your presence. It doesn't wait. It simply forgets. The house on Chestnut Hill Lane looked the same from the curb, but I knew deep in my bones that it wasn't mine anymore. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way that counts when a man returns from the vast indifference of the ocean, expecting embraces, laughter, the warmth of his kitchen, and finds only a cold, sterile void. And yet I needed to know what I was dealing with. I didn't want to operate on anger or hearsay. I wanted facts, cold, hard, documented facts. So I called the one person I trusted implicitly in such matters, my cousin Bram. Bram Knox had been an intelligence specialist in the military, which meant that surveillance wasn't just a skill for him, it was a second skin. He could trace a whisper through a wall and map a room by the shadows it cast. Now retired, he spent most of his days tinkering with antique radios and pretending he didn't miss the adrenaline. I was about to give him something better than nostalgia. I was giving him a mission. I called him from the hotel lobby that morning. You got a couple of hours? Depends, he grunted. Am I wearing a wire or packing lunch? Both, I said. Bring your longest lens. By noon, Bram was set up 2 houses down in the empty apartment old Mr. Kendrick used to own before he moved to Phoenix. Bram had the keys, don't ask me how. and a perfect unobstructed view of the front of my house, our house. He didn't say much while he worked, just sent me snapshots every 30 minutes. Time-stamped, clear, steady. The first clip came at 12:37 p.m. Melon in a white dress. Not casual white, not I'm just feeling summery white. This was a full-blown wedding gown, silk, lace trim, a train that pooled around her feet. Beside her on the driveway stood a man I recognized instantly from an old university alumni magazine Malin used to leave on our coffee table. Dr. Quinn Ellery. He was older than I remembered, gaunt with a silver-streaked beard, polished. One of those men who spoke as if every word had been pre-approved and sponsored by a trust fund. I remembered asking Melon once if she had a crush on one of her professors. She had laughed it off. Now she was in a bridal gown standing next to one. They were posing for pictures in front of our magnolia tree. White and gold balloons bobbed above them. A neighbor walked by with her dog and stopped to offer congratulations. I watched through Bram's sterile images as Melon beamed. The man, Ellery, placed a possessive hand on her back. Then 2 small figures appeared in the doorway. Malik, my son, taller now, his face longer, the sharp angles of the man he would become just beginning to emerge. He wore a button-down shirt and loafers, his posture stiff, uncomfortable. Beside him, Rhea skipped out in a little floral dress, clapping her hands, clutching a small pillow with fake rings sewn onto it. It hit me like a physical blow. They were staging a whole damn ceremony. My daughter was carrying rings for a man who wasn't her father. My son stood like a prop in the background of a play he hadn't auditioned for. Even the dog, Armut, the stray we had taken in 5 years ago and renamed Beacon, sported a ridiculous tuxedo collar. He barked once, then sat obediently at Ellery's feet. I had to pause the video. My hands had begun to tremble, not with rage, not even with heartbreak, but with a cold, stark clarity. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't a fleeting indiscretion. Melon had rewritten the entire narrative. She had orchestrated a second wedding on the bones of our old life. She had erased me from the picture before I even had a chance to defend myself. I pressed play again. This time I looked for details. Who was taking the pictures? A young woman I didn't recognize. Probably a friend or a hired hand. No other guests, no family, no fanfare, just a quiet, brutal betrayal. Then came the second clip. Inside the house. Bram had shifted his vantage point, now peering through the side kitchen window using a long-range lens. He was careful, unseen, still. What I saw chilled me more than anything else. Our wedding photos were gone. New frames sat on the mantelpiece. Melon and Ellery at a vineyard. Melon and Ellery on a beach. Melon and Ellery holding hands in matching robes, looking sickeningly content at what appeared to be a spa. But the most disturbing thing was the wall where the kids' growth chart used to hang, our markings, our annual photos. Malik's goofy pirate pose from when he was 7 had been painted over with a stark, sterile white. Nothing remained. I wanted to rage. I wanted to shatter something. Instead, I made notes, meticulously, calmly. Then Bram sent the final clip. No sound, just a still frame. Melin on the sofa, scrolling through something on her phone, a small, self-satisfied smile playing on her lips. Ellery in an armchair, sipping wine, one leg crossed over the other, talking on speakerphone to someone whose posture radiated the smugness of a man who believed he had won. They hadn't even noticed the children had gone outside. They didn't care. I stared at that frame for a long time because that moment, quiet and insignificant to them, screamed volumes to me. This wasn't about love, not for her. This was about replacement. She hadn't just moved on. She had meticulously erased. She wasn't trying to build a new chapter. She was trying to obliterate the entire book, and that was my line in the sand. Bram called that night. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. "I'm cold," I said, the chill seeping deeper than the sea ever could. "Good," he replied. "Cold men don't make stupid mistakes." I thanked him. He never asked why I needed the footage. He didn't have to. We were raised with the understanding that sometimes silence screams louder than any fury. I didn't tell him, but I had already made my next move. That night I requested a full background check on Quinn Ellery. Finances, history, professional records, anything that could give me leverage. I wasn't interested in a shouting match. I was interested in a controlled demolition. I no longer wanted to fight for what was mine. I wanted them to understand they never truly owned it. They had borrowed my family, they had borrowed my life, and I was coming to collect the debt. It's a strange sensation, walking into a place you once called home and realizing you're a ghost within its walls. Like being in a museum of your own life, where someone has rearranged the exhibits and scrubbed your name from all the plaques. That's how I felt stepping across the threshold of the house on Chestnut Hill Lane. Mellon had claimed the locks were changed. She had lied. The key on my ring still slid into the cylinder with a familiar click. The bolt turned, smooth and predictable. For a fleeting moment, a mere breath, I almost convinced myself it was all a mistake, that I would walk in and hear Rhea humming in the kitchen or Malik yelling at his video games upstairs, that Mellon would descend the stairs barefoot, surprised, flustered, overjoyed. But I was met with silence, not a peaceful quiet, not the stillness of early morning and fresh coffee. This was an empty silence, a void from which everything that made it real had been meticulously scrubbed away. The front hallway was sterile, that was the word. The coat rack was gone. The bins where the kids used to dump their school books were absent. No lingering scent of their muddy sneakers, no smudges of little hands on the wall where Malik used to trace the hallway as he ran. I moved deeper into the house. The living room had been reimagined. Gray throw pillows, a glass coffee table, minimalist art that looked like it belonged in a corporate lobby. Every trace of warmth had been banished. The wall of family photos was bare. In its place hung prints of windswept coastal lighthouses and soaring seabirds. She hadn't just moved on, she had executed a complete system reset, as if I had never existed within these walls. I sat on the armrest of what used to be my chair, my one indulgence, a worn leather recliner I had bought on a trip to Boston, and noticed it was gone. In its place stood a Scandinavian reading nook. No one in this house ever read. Then I saw it. Malik's basketball trophy. It lay on its side in the hallway just outside the entrance to the kitchen. The base was cracked. One of the metal arms was bent, pointing accusingly at the wall, as if it had been stomped on or carelessly flung aside. I picked it up, the weight familiar in my hand. It was the one he had won in 7th grade. He had come home ecstatic, bouncing, yelling about the winning shot. We had stayed up late that night, rewatching the grainy video of the game. He had made me rewind it 6 times. I remembered every single second of that footage. Now the trophy lay discarded, unwanted. I placed it carefully on the kitchen counter. My footsteps echoed too loudly in the house. That was the most unsettling thing. It wasn't just empty of me. It echoed with the absence of something else, something vital. But I wasn't here for memories. I was here for facts. I went upstairs, careful not to leave any trace on the polished banister. I knew I had limited time. Mellon and Ellery were still in their so-called honeymoon phase, but with people like that, you never knew. They thrived on dramatic entrances and unexpected returns. The door to her office was locked. It always had been. It used to be the guest room until she had converted it into her workspace, a place where she claimed she could organize her chaos. I remembered helping her choose the desk. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small set of lockpicks Bram had given me last Christmas, a half-joking, just-in-case gift. I think he always knew it would be for something more than a lost key. 2 clicks, one held breath, and the door swung silently inward. The room looked like a command center. Files stacked high, blueprints spread across the large desk, spreadsheets pinned to a corkboard, multiple tabs open on her second computer monitor. I didn't touch the computer. I didn't need to. My eyes were drawn to the desk drawers, the third one down, locked again. I didn't hesitate. Inside, I found them. 2 identical manila folders, one labeled with the address of this house, the other with the address of the house next door, currently owned by a woman named Janet Greaves. According to the documents Janet had already agreed to sell, the financing routed through a shell corporation registered in Nevada. The kicker: the project was titled the Ellery Compound Development, the Family Forward Initiative. Family Forward. A bitter laugh escaped me. They weren't just renovating the house, they were building a compound, a sanitized, rebranded version of my family life. Two houses joined by a shared yard, plans for a private tutor for Ria, a state-of-the-art basketball court designed specifically for the boys. Boys. I wasn't in those plans. I was the ghost, the obstacle. In the folder, a draft of a petition to transfer Malik and Ria's school records to a new custodial address. Guess who was listed as the primary contact? Ellery, not Mellon. He wasn't just stepping into my shoes, he was trying to erase my footprints entirely. Then I found it. An envelope. Thick, yellowed, the edges slightly softened with age. It was tucked beneath a stack of files, almost as an afterthought. It was from Gregory Harland, Mellon's late father, dated 3 months before his death. I recognized the spidery, uneven handwriting. Inside was a notarized agreement, a contract stipulating that any house purchased in Mellon's name using funds from her father's trust required dual consent for any major structural changes, refinancing, or sale. And since I jointly managed that trust at Gregory's insistence, my signature was required for any transfer of ownership of this house. Mellon hadn't just underestimated me. She had forgotten her father's foresight. He hadn't trusted her judgment. He had said as much once, years ago, when I was helping him fix the roof. My daughter loves beauty, Sterling, but she doesn't always see the cracks forming beneath it. He had made sure I was protected, and he had made it legally binding. I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket, closed the drawer, and wiped the handle clean. I didn't take pictures. I didn't need to. Some leverage works best when held in silence. Before I left, I did one last thing. I went into Malik's old room. It had been repainted. No posters, no trophies, no hint of the boy he had been. But on the baseboard there was still a faint scratch from when he had dropped his skateboard at 9 years old. I knelt down, ran my fingers over it. Still there, proof that not everything could be erased. Stepping back outside, I paused on the porch. She had tried to erase me, replace me, forget me. But the house remembered, and now so did I. I barely slept that night after leaving the house. Not from nightmares. Those come when your mind is trying to make sense of chaos. This wasn't chaos. This was clarity. The kind of stark clarity that leaves you wide awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, arms crossed over your chest, replaying conversations that never happened. My thoughts kept returning to Malik and Ria. In the clips Bram had sent, they hadn't looked abused, but they hadn't looked comfortable either. Malik was stiff, like he had been told how to stand, what to say. Ria had smiled, but I knew that smile. It was the one she used when she wanted to keep the peace in a room that felt like it was about to shatter. I had taught her that smile, unintentionally, the last time Mellon and I had a screaming match in the kitchen. She had peeked in and said, "Everything okay?" with that same bright, brittle expression. Children always watch. They notice more than you think. They just don't always have the words for it. That morning I asked Kasha, "What's the quickest way to talk to my kids without going through Mellon?" She didn't blink. "Find them where she's not looking. Never ask permission for what's yours." So I did. I knew Malik had basketball practice on Tuesdays, still at the same high school gym I had taken him to for years. He was 13 now, shooting up fast. I had missed his birthday last month, though I had sent a card from the ship. I didn't know if it had arrived. I had a copy of a picture we had taken 3 years ago when I was showing him how to properly shoot a three-pointer. He had taped it to his locker back then. I wondered if it was still there. I arrived early, sitting in the bleachers in a hoodie and jeans. I didn't want to cause a scene, just needed to see him, maybe exchange a few words. When he walked in with the team, I saw it in his eyes. Recognition followed by a flicker of something, hesitation, resentment. He froze. I raised a hand slightly, not a wave, just a quiet acknowledgement that I saw him. He gave a barely perceptible nod and headed to the far end of the court. I waited. After practice, as the other boys filtered out, Malik approached, a towel draped around his neck, his face carefully blank. "Hey," I said. He scanned me, his gaze guarded. "You're back." "Yeah. Your mom said I left because I didn't want to be here anymore." that I chose the ship over you guys. I nodded slowly. Did she tell you why I took that job? He frowned. She said it was about the money. It was, but not for me. It was for you, for Rhea, for her, for this house we built together. The bills were piling up, and she said we needed a break, so I took the hardest, most isolating work I could find. That break cost me 8 months. He didn't reply. I tried again. I didn't abandon you, Malik. I left to fight for you, for our family. His jaw tightened. He looked away. She says Uncle Quinn is better for Rhea. He doesn't yell. He buys her stuff. He helped her with her science fair model. And you believe that makes him better? Malik's lips trembled, but he said nothing. He's here, and you weren't, he finally said, the words hitting with the blunt force of truth. Fair enough, he was right. But presence isn't parenting, and gifts don't build character. Can I ask you something? I said quietly. When he shoots a basketball, does he look like someone who knows the game? Malik flinched almost imperceptibly. He had double dribbled in the park last summer, a rookie mistake I had gently corrected. I offered a small, sad smile. Then maybe he's not as perfect as he seems. We sat in silence for a moment. I let him process, didn't push. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the basketball trophy I'd found in the hallway, the one Melon had discarded like trash. I held it out to him. Found this on the floor. Thought you might need it more than they do. Malik took it, his fingers tracing the crack in the base, touching it carefully as if it could reopen something inside him. You remember this. I never forgot. He didn't say anything, just nodded again. Not a full reconciliation, but a shift, a beginning. I didn't try to hug him. He wasn't ready. I just stood up and said, Tell Rhea I'd like to see her, and this time I'm not going anywhere. He didn't reply, but he didn't say no either. That was enough. 2 days later, I saw Rhea. Her school still had Friday afternoon art classes, and pickup was through the side gate. I waited in my car a block away from the line of parents, watching as the children spilled out like colorful birds released from a cage. She was the last one out, clutching a paper dolphin she had made, shimmering with blue glitter. When she saw me leaning against the fence, her face lit up for a split second with pure, unadulterated instinct, then clouded with confusion. Daddy! Hey, sweetheart, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She ran halfway, then stopped, glancing back towards the parking lot. A white SUV waited there, Ellery probably inside, watching. I knelt down. It's okay. You don't have to choose. I just wanted to say hello. She approached slowly, cautiously. Mommy said you don't live with us anymore, that you wanted to be alone. I never wanted that, I said, my gaze steady. But sometimes people say things because they're scared or angry. They try to rewrite the story. She tilted her head. What story? That you don't need your dad anymore, that he can be replaced. Is that true? No, she said softly. Good, I replied, my voice barely a whisper. But I needed you to remember that for yourself. She held out the paper dolphin. I made this for you. Mommy said I had to give it to Uncle Quinn, but I didn't want to. I took it as if it were the crown jewels. It's beautiful. You know, dolphins mate for life. She nodded, her small face serious, like you and Mommy were supposed to. My throat tightened. Something like that. We sat on the curb for another 3 minutes, just us. No pressure, no agenda. Then the SUV honked. Go on, I said, forcing a smile. But I'll see you soon. Okay? She hugged me quickly, fiercely. Then she ran. I didn't look at Ellery. I didn't need to. I had just reclaimed more ground in 5 minutes of truth than he could buy with months of lies. I wasn't interested in Quinn Ellery's resume. Anyone can polish paper. I wanted to know what lay beneath the veneer, what festered beneath the bleached smiles and the philosophical charm. Mellon had fallen for a man who spoke in TED Talk quotes and smelled of imported arrogance, and she thought I would be too slow, too humble, too far away to ever challenge it. She was wrong. Kasha had already started digging before I even asked. That was her style. proactive. When she handed me a thick file labeled Ellery Quinn J. Preliminary Due Diligence, I didn't open it immediately. I just stared at it for a moment, feeling the weight of everything I suspected being about to be confirmed. We were back in her office, 31st floor, same glass walls, same faint scent of lavender and calculated ambition. "Ready for this?" she asked, her gaze sharp. I had stopped needing to be ready the day he parked his just-married car in my driveway. I nodded. "Start on page 5. I did. And what I saw didn't surprise me, but it did ignite a cold, simmering fury. Quinn Ellery had a pattern, a clear, clinical, well-rehearsed pattern. He had been married 3 times before. Each marriage followed the same predictable arc: whirlwind romance, rapid cohabitation, financial entanglement, and then a swift, brutal unraveling within 2 years. All the women had one thing in common. They entered the relationship with significant wealth, property, or access to passive income. Wife number 1, Serena, inherited a vineyard from her family in Sonoma, sold it 6 months after the wedding, and declared bankruptcy 8 months later. Wife number 2, Layla, owned a chain of yoga studios. She ceded control to Quinn to consolidate the business. The studios closed. Her assets were drained through a shell management company registered in Panama. Wife number 3, Tasha, a curator at an art gallery in Boston. Quinn convinced her to leverage the gallery as collateral for an investment property in Boise. The Boise project never materialized. The gallery, however, was foreclosed upon. She now lived in a studio apartment in Brighton. Each time Quinn walked away clean. He was never the one on the paperwork. He never left fingerprints. He simply advised, suggested, facilitated. And when the house of cards collapsed, he vanished. Now it was Melon's turn, and she brought 2 assets he had never had before: children and a trust. His educational outreach project in Costa Rica, Kasia continued, tapping a page in the file, doesn't exist. It's a tax haven. His nonprofit's license had been revoked last year for irregular reporting. "He's planning to move the kids there," I murmured, the thought a cold knot in my stomach. She looked up at me, her eyes unwavering. "If he tries, I'll flag him in every port from here to Lima." I kept flipping through the file. Melon had married a parasite, but it was worse than that. She had helped him burrow in. She was either blind or complicit. And frankly, I wasn't sure which was more damning. Then I reached the last page, the property records, a printout of the transactions for the shell corporation we had found earlier in her office. The company that had been buying up houses, both ours and the one next door, was registered under a name I recognized but hadn't heard in years. Maddox Knox Holdings. My name. Not Melon's, not Ellery's. Mine. Apparently, back when Melon and I were still in love, when we had talked about building a family empire, she had registered a dummy LLC under my name to make future investments easier. I had signed the papers, of course, oblivious that it still existed, let alone that she was now using it to fuel her compound fantasy. It was her mistake. Kasia was already smiling. "Want to twist the knife?" "Not yet," I said. "First, I want to watch him squirm." That same day, I asked Kasia to arrange a meeting. No legal posturing, no courtrooms, no lawsuits, just man-to-man. I wanted to look Quinn in the eye, shake his hand, and let him believe he had won. Only then would I show him what the battlefield truly looked like. We met at a cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse, public, neutral, controlled. I wore a dark blue shirt, no jacket. He arrived in a beige blazer and sockless loafers, predictable. He extended a hand. I shook it. "Sterling Knox," he said, all practice charm. "Glad we can finally talk, man to man." I nodded, settling into the booth opposite him. "I imagine you know why I'm here." He chuckled, a dry, self-assured sound. "I presume not to offer congratulations." I didn't return the smile, just stirred the black coffee I wouldn't touch. "I'm not here to fight you, Quinn." That made him pause. No, of course not. What then?" "I'm here to offer you a way out." He leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on. You can have Melon, be with her, enjoy her trust fund, her charm, her taste in expensive drapes. I won't stand in your way, but you leave the house. You leave my children. You disappear, clean break. No messy court battles, no reputation-destroying revelations. He tilted his head as if I had just offered him a coupon for dry cleaning. And if I don't, then I use the full weight of your past, I said calmly. Serena, Layla, Tasha, the Costa Rican scam, the shell companies, the IRS red flags, the Panamanian paper trail. I will bury you in public records. I will make sure every institution knows your name and exactly how you operate. He no longer smiled, just stared. You have no proof, he said slowly. I have a file. He laughed, a short dismissive bark. You're bluffing. Believe that until it hits the press. He took a deep breath. You're angry. No, I said. I'm awake. It's different. Then I stood, reached into my bag, and slid a small photograph across the table. Me, Malik, and Rhea covered in sea salt, laughing on a beach. A real memory, not staged, not sponsored. See this? I said. This isn't yours. Never was. And if you ever try to take what belongs to me again, I won't be polite. He glanced at the photo. Melon loves me, he murmured. She loves the idea of escape, I said. You're just a vessel, like I used to be. The difference is I know how to navigate. Then I walked away. No threats, no raised voices, just facts laid bare. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew he was watching me go, calculating how deep the knife already was. It was the last moment he felt in control, and he didn't even know it yet. There's a unique silence that follows a conversation like the one I had with Quinn Ellery. Not the awkward silence after an argument, not the hollow silence after heartbreak, but a focused, deliberate quiet, like the held breath before a controlled explosion. You know something is coming. You just don't know how loud it will be. I had warned him, given him a chance to walk away before the wave crashed. But men like Ellery don't listen. They don't believe in consequences. They believe in performance, in applause. So I made sure that when the curtain fell, it wasn't a quiet exit. It was an exposé. Kasha had spent the last 2 days compiling all the evidence I had unearthed from Mellon's office and Bram's surveillance. The sham wedding, the school transfer attempts, the Costa Rican outreach, the paper trail leading to Panama. But the real cherry on top was something small, technical, and devastatingly precise. They weren't legally married. No license, no sworn witnesses, no certificate filed. They had a party, but not a marriage, not in the eyes of the law, not in the eyes of the court, the custody system, and certainly not mine. I had asked Kasha to discreetly, anonymously leak the documents to a journalist named Maureen Holliday. She was sharp, ethical, and relentless when it came to exposing financial predators. The kind of woman who didn't just report scandals, she built timelines, cited case law, and listed every name involved. 2 days after our meeting, Maureen's article dropped. Quinn Ellery's predatory partnerships, when marriage is just a means. It was subtle enough to avoid the tabloids, but substantial enough to raise eyebrows in the right circles. Family court, boardrooms, private trusts. His once polished, rehearsed reputation now came with an asterisk the size of Texas. And while that news simmered like a quiet wildfire, I prepared something more personal. I asked Bram to deliver a package to Mellon, not to the front door. That would be too easy, too expected. Bram waited until mid-morning when the kids were at school and Ellery was likely scrambling damage control. Then he slipped it through the gap in the side gate with a handwritten note. The box was wrapped in dark blue paper, tied with simple twine. Inside was only one thing, a photograph. It was taken the year before I left. Malik on my shoulders, grinning wide, the ocean waves crashing behind us. Rhea holding a kite, a blur of joyful energy, and Mellon in the middle. Real, unguarded, the last trip we had taken as a whole family before everything started to fray. Beneath the photo, I placed a single card. They weren't yours to give away. That was it. No threats, no accusations, just the stark truth. She called me 2 hours later. One missed call, no voicemail, then silence again. It was working. They had thought I would be a fool, take the blow, and stay out at sea where they could keep my image blurry, abstract, disposable. Instead, I had returned sharper, colder, and I wasn't knocking anymore. The next day, Kashaw and I met with a federal investigator. Not because we wanted to press charges against Ellery, not yet, but because we needed documentation. Every action had to be traceable, legal, airtight. We handed over the evidence of the sham corporation, the fraudulent marriage certificates, the school enrollment form signed without my consent, Ria's birth certificate with Ellery's name scrawled on a digital authorization form. Fraud. Kasha was surgical in her approach. By the time we left that office, we didn't need to wait for justice. We were building it ourselves. But there was one more step. See, Mellon still had her circle. The women from her yoga classes, her book club, her curated brunches, who lived for wine tastings and meticulously staged dramas. They believed her narrative, that I was an absent husband, a neglectful father, a cold seaman who preferred the ocean to his own family. So I invited one of them for coffee. Adrienne, her name was, always polite, always curious, the kind of woman who asked questions with too much sugar in her voice. I let her talk, let her mention the happy new couple, let her drop little comments like, "Mellon seems so much happier now and the children adore Quinn." And then I pulled out my phone and showed her 30 seconds of video, Moloch on the porch, Quinn's voice booming in the background. Something about respect and discipline, Moloch flinching. Not much, not dramatic, but enough to tell the story. Adrienne went silent. I smiled. Tell everyone at brunch whatever you like. Just make sure it's the truth this time. She left without finishing her latte. By the next morning, the calls started again, this time from Mellon. 3 missed calls, then a text. I think we need to talk. I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I went to Ria's school and signed in as a visitor for lunch. I brought her favorite grilled cheese, cut into triangles, apple juice, no pulp. She hugged me without asking permission. "Mommy says you've been busy," she said. "I have." "Are you mad at her?" "I'm focused," I replied. She considered this for a moment. "Mommy cries sometimes, at night." I sighed. We all cry when we realize what we've lost. She tilted her head. "Did you lose something?" I nodded. "I thought I did, but—" She pulled a folded drawing from her pocket. It was of Malik and me on a boat, the sun overhead. A 4th figure stood on the dock, alone. "Is that Mommy?" I asked. She nodded. She doesn't like boats. I carefully folded the drawing and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Sometimes children see with a clarity that eludes the adults who pretend to be in control. By the time I got back to my car, Mellon had called again. Another text. I made a mistake. That was the beginning of her unraveling, and I was just getting started. Some men walk into court like they're going to war, fury in their voice, thunder in their chest. I wasn't one of them. I walked in quietly, not because I wasn't angry, but because anger is loud, and loud men miss the details. Family court isn't about volume. It's about narrative, documents, proof, timing, and, in the right hands, the truth doesn't shout. It's lethal. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, precisely 9:00 a.m., a motion for temporary custody. Kashaw had filed it the day after Ellery's name appeared on Ria's emergency contact form at school. It was the final straw. I arrived 15 minutes early. Kashaw was already waiting by the front steps, impeccable as always in her gray power suit and severe heels. She handed me a single sheet of paper. "Don't speak unless the judge asks you a direct question. And when she does, no emotion, just the truth." I nodded. Inside, the courtroom was beige and clinical, a place where families unraveled under the hum of fluorescent lights and the judging gazes of strangers. Rows of empty chairs, one long table for each side. Mellon sat at the far end, her hair pulled back tight, pearl earrings, a neutral dress. She was trying for the lifestyle blogger mother look, soft, serene, respectable, but her eyes betrayed her. She hadn't slept. Beside her sat a new lawyer, not the first one who had left those frantic voicemails and threatened fire. He had bailed after seeing our filings. This one was younger, quieter, probably convinced he could spin a tale of redemption and modern love. And then there was Ellery. He sat behind them, not at the table, not technically a party in the custody motion, but emotionally, spiritually, he was the catalyst for everything. His posture was relaxed, but I saw the tension in his jaw. He wasn't smiling anymore. The judge entered. A middle-aged woman with severe glasses and no jewelry, the kind who had seen enough broken people to recognize when someone was trying too hard to look whole. Kashaw went first, measured, controlled. She didn't attack Mellon. She didn't accuse. She presented a stack of photographs documenting the sham wedding, a copy of the unfiled marriage certificate, court records of Ellery's previous bankruptcies, financial documents tracing the transfers from Mellon's trust to a shell account linked to a non-existent nonprofit, proof of the attempted school enrollment without my consent. Then she dropped the final card. Ria's drawing, Exhibit G. The judge took her time with it. Our family, me, Malik, Ria on a boat waving, Mellon alone on the dock, her face sad. A small speech bubble above her head read, "Mommy." Kasha's voice never rose above a whisper. "Your Honor, our position is not punitive. Mr. Knox does not seek to erase the children's mother from their lives. He seeks to protect them from instability and manipulation. He returned from a legitimate work contract to find his home, his assets, and his parental role undermined by a man with a documented history of financial predation. This is not revenge, it's preservation." Then she sat down. Mellon's lawyer stood. He started with charm, a disarming smile, referred to me as an absentee father, spoke of sacrifice, of love, of the need for modern families to adapt, to evolve. Then he tried to paint Mellon as a woman acting in good faith under emotional duress. She believed her husband had abandoned their family. She took steps to maintain stability for her children. Mr. Ellery provided guidance, emotional support, structure. We asked the court to recognize the natural transition occurring for these children and not punish them for parental conflict. The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Ellery is the biological father." "No, Your Honor." "Is he legally married to the mother?" "No, Your Honor." "Then why is he listed on school forms and as an emergency contact?" Mellon's lawyer stammered. He acted out of an assumption." "No," the judge cut him off. "He acted without authority. There's a significant difference." Silence. Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Knox, you've been silent. Do you have anything to say before I issue a temporary ruling?" I stood slowly. My voice didn't waver. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here because my children deserve stability, not just comfort, not just gifts, not just beach photos and brunches. They need someone who shows up when it's hard, when it's boring, when it's quiet. I spent 8 months on a ship so they would have a home. I came back to find that home stolen, not physically, but in spirit." I looked directly at Mellon. "I'm not perfect. I've missed moments, but I have never stopped being their father, and I never will." Then I sat down. The judge looked down at her notes. She asked no more questions. She simply spoke. "I've seen many custody disputes, some ugly, some tragic. This one is surgical, but make no mistake, I'm not concerned with the polish, I'm concerned with the pattern. Mr. Ellery's pattern is deeply concerning, his presence is destabilizing, and this mother, while clearly under emotional distress, has demonstrated poor judgment in attempting to replace a father with a partner who has no legal connection to these children." She adjusted her glasses. "Effective immediately, temporary full custody is awarded to Mr. Sterling Knox. The mother's visitation rights can be petitioned upon completion of a psychological evaluation. Mr. Ellery is forbidden from any contact with the children unless explicitly approved by this court." You could have heard a pin drop. Mellon's mouth hung slightly open, as if she had forgotten how to breathe. Her lawyer scribbled furiously, and Ellery. He stood and walked out without looking back. Kashaw leaned over and whispered, "Checkmate." I didn't smile. Not yet. The bailiff handed me the paperwork. The judge left the bench and Mellon sat there, her hands clenched, knuckles white, staring into the void. I stood, gathered my things, and walked slowly past her. She looked up, her voice a mere breath. "Did you plan all of this?" I paused just long enough to reply without turning. "No," I said. "You did." Then I walked out of that courtroom with a new custody order, my dignity restored, and a truth she could never rewrite. They had tried to erase me. Instead, they had erased their own future. The old house stood silent, untouched after the court ruling, but I never went back. Not once. I didn't need to. That house had never truly been a home. It was a temporary port, a shell. Once filled with laughter and toys and dreams, that version no longer existed. Melon hadn't just removed me from the walls. She had ripped the soul out of the floorboards, so I let it go. Instead, I bought a new house. Smaller, simpler, a single story, 3 bedrooms, a porch with 2 chairs I actually used, and a backyard big enough for a grill and a hammock. It was on the edge of town, near the bayous, where at night you could still hear the croaking of frogs and the distant hum of a boat from the marina. It wasn't grand, but it was ours. It was honest. Rhea painted her room blue herself, with crooked dolphins and one seahorse that looked more like a gummy bear, but I didn't say anything. She was proud of it. Called it her underwater kingdom. I let her leave glittery handprints on the walls. Who was I to stop a little queen from marking her territory? Malik was more reserved. 14, taller than me now. His voice starting to crack like he was tuning into a station he didn't quite recognize yet. He didn't say much the first few days, just helped me assemble the grill, arranged his books on the shelves, and carried boxes as if it was his silent way of settling in. On the 3rd evening, we sat outside, roasting marshmallows over a small fire pit. I poked at the dirt with a stick. He watched the flames for a while, then finally said, "This feels real." I nodded. That's the point. No cameras, no pretending, no Ellery. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You noticed that too, huh?" I stirred the embers. "I see everything now." After a long pause, he added, "Mom said he left, just packed his bags and went back to Boston." I didn't flinch. It was always his style. "Do you think she's sad?" "I think she's shocked." He looked at me. "At what?" "That I came back and didn't beg." He considered this. "She said you were weak." I didn't bristle, just handed him another marshmallow on a stick. That's what people say when they don't understand quiet strength. He didn't reply, but I noticed he roasted that marshmallow with a little more focus than the last. The house remained deliberately sparse for a while. No framed photos on the walls, no wedding portraits, no strained family smiles. Just white space and real moments. Rhea noticed first. "Why don't we have any pictures?" I looked around. The living room walls were bare, almost clinical. A sofa, a bookshelf, a lamp with a crooked shade she had picked out at a thrift store because we're still making the ones that matter, she had declared. She pondered this, but I have lots in my head already. Then let's make one. That weekend we used my old camera and set the timer. Malik rolled his eyes but stood between us. Rhea climbed onto my shoulders, holding her paper dolphin like a trophy. We laughed. Real laughter, no posing. I printed the photo in black and white. We hung it above the fireplace, unframed, just taped to the wall. It became the first picture in the new house, not a memory of what was, but a record of who we were becoming. Later that night, as I finished washing dishes, Rhea wandered into the kitchen, clutching her old stuffed octopus. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Will Mommy be okay?" I dried my hands, squatted down to her level. "Maybe, if she wants to be." Her brow furrowed. "Do you still care about her?" I didn't lie. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I loved her once, and a part of me always will. But that doesn't mean I trust her. And it doesn't mean she gets to be in our lives the same way anymore." She nodded slowly. "So caring doesn't mean staying?" "Exactly. Sometimes love means letting people go when they stop treating you the way they should." She blinked like she was filing that lesson away in a mental Rolodex. Then she whispered, "I'm glad you're back. I never really left you." Later, Malik found me in the garage. He was looking through the old trophies I hadn't unpacked yet. He held up one of his, years old, the base chipped, the same one Melon had thrown away. She didn't throw it away because it was broken, he said. I looked at him. No, she threw it away because it reminded her of me. He nodded. She always wanted everything to look perfect, even if it meant lying. She lied to us. Yes, I said. But you didn't believe her. Not really. Not deep down. He paused, then said something I hadn't expected. You're better than Ellery. He never even shot hoops with me, said it was a waste of time. A small smile touched my lips. It's never a waste of time when it connects you to someone. He looked at me. You always deserved better, I told him. That night, he asked if we could put up a basketball hoop in the backyard. Just a simple one, nothing fancy. We did it the next day. No cement, just dirt and a pole. But when he sank his first basket, the sound of the net swishing, silent and clean, was louder than anything I had heard in months. The weeks passed quietly. No calls from Melon, no new boyfriends, no custody battles. I knew she was regrouping somewhere, likely spinning a new narrative, rebuilding her mirror, convincing herself she was the wronged party. People like that don't like silence. It forces them to listen. But I wasn't waiting for the next chapter. I was writing my own. We spent our days simply Ria's school projects, Malik's games, dinner at the table, evening walks. I started reading again. The books I had abandoned during the long months at sea. I kept a journal, not out of habit, but out of necessity. Some stories are too heavy to carry without a place to set down the weight. And slowly the house filled not with things, but with us. The smell of burnt toast and laughter during card games, Malik's music echoing from his room, Ria's knocks on my door with jokes that never quite landed, the sound of healing. There was peace here. Not because everything was fixed, but because nothing had to be perfect. It just had to be honest. I still have that text message. Not because I need to remind myself of the pain, but because sometimes you keep the bullet that grazed your heart as a reminder of how close it came. It's still there, buried in the cloud archive of my phone, time-stamped, cold, precise. Don't bother coming in. Lock's changed. The children don't want you. It's over. Reading it again now, I can almost see the streetlights reflecting off the windshield that day, the white balloons on that car, the bitter taste that rose in my throat. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the finality she had tried to hand me like a death sentence. And then there was my reply. As you wish. 2 words. She probably read them and smiled, thought I was giving up, walking away. Maybe she told Ellery, it's over, he's gone. But she never understood that those words weren't surrender. They were permission. Permission to rewrite the ending. Permission to reclaim my story. Permission for me to decide how this all concluded. See, when someone tries to erase you, the worst thing you can do is disappear and let them win. Let them tell everyone you were never strong enough, never worthy enough, never needed. But if you stay quiet and steady and focused, if you rebuild what they tried to tear down, that's the kind of revenge that doesn't scream, it just echoes. That night after the custody hearing, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and I didn't have to impress anyone. Just the stars, just the chirping crickets, and the quiet thump of Malik's basketball in the driveway. Ria came out wrapped in a blanket, clutching her stuffed dolphin and one of her bedtime storybooks. She climbed onto the chair next to me without asking. We were silent for a while. She just leaned against my arm and I put mine around her without thinking. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't felt in months. I was finally home, not in a building, not in a courtroom, but in this small, soft, vulnerable moment, with a child leaning against me without fear. Do you remember what Mommy wrote in that message? Ria asked suddenly. I hesitated. Yes. She said, the children don't want you. I looked down at her. Did you ever say that? No, she said. And neither did Malik, I know. She shifted under the blanket. Then why did she say it? I considered how much truth a child could handle. Sometimes, I said, people try to hurt others by using the things they love, because they think it will make them strong, and because they're scared that if they don't control the story, they'll lose everything. Ria didn't reply, but she held out something to me, a folded piece of paper from one of her notebooks. I unfolded it. It was a drawing of our new house. Me, Malik, Ria, and her dolphin standing in front of it. No one else outside, just us. I like this family better, she whispered. Me too. A few weeks later, a message came, not the old one, a new one from Melon. It wasn't angry, it wasn't cruel, it was short. I'd like to talk, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. Kasha had said I didn't have to reply. Legally, there was no reason, emotionally, even less. But I did. Not for her, for myself. I met her at a diner on the edge of town. No lawyers, no pressure, just a booth by the window and 2 untouched cups of coffee. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not in size, in presence. Like the weight of her own choices had finally caught up to her. I didn't think you'd agree to this, she said. I didn't do it for you. She nodded. I know. We just sat for a while. Then she finally spoke. I wasn't happy, not for a long time, and instead of telling you, I started to resent you. I went silent, and then when you left on the ship, it was like I could breathe again. But it wasn't real, it was just space, and I filled it with the first thing that felt like freedom. Quinn. She gave a small, self-deprecating nod. He saw what I wanted him to see. I let him tell me I deserved more, and maybe I did, but not like that. I didn't flinch. You made your choice? Yes, she said, and it was the wrong one. She swallowed hard. I miss them, the kids. Ria won't answer my calls. Malik barely says a word. You broke their trust, I said. You have to earn it back, not demand it. And you? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Are you still angry? No, I said, but I'm not waiting anymore. She looked down at her cup. Do you hate me? No, I said quietly. I pity you. You traded something real for something shiny, and when the shine wore off, you realized you were alone. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't offer comfort. That wasn't my role anymore. I stood to leave, pulled a folded piece of paper from my jacket pocket, and laid it on the table. It was a printout of our visitation schedule, dates, rules, boundaries. I won't keep you from seeing them, but I will protect them from the version of you that lies to feel strong. She nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Thank you. I walked out without looking back. Some chapters aren't meant to be rewritten, they're meant to end. Now, months later, I keep that first message in my archive. I never deleted it because every story has a turning point. That message was mine. It didn't break me, it woke me up. And everything I've rebuilt, every brick, every connection with my children, every quiet night in this honest house where integrity lives in the walls, it's all because of that single moment. Sometimes life sends you a storm just to show you what kind of sailor you really are. And I didn't drown. I didn't sink. I sailed right through it.